You think the economy is getting better and your bank account is safe, but the reality is you are quietly getting absolutely crushed by inflation and protectionist market policies. While Wall Street elites laugh all the way to the bank, if you are tired of watching your hard-earned money slowly melt away while the broad market experiences absolute structural shifts on your timeline, then listen up, because today we are tearing down the biggest illusion in modern global trade. Look at what is happening right now. One of the best electric vehicles that you can buy anywhere on the planet is legally not for sale in the United States. Not because these cars are unsafe or because they do not meet the strict mechanical requirements to be an electric vehicle, but because the United States government has placed a massive 19% tariff on electric vehicles coming from the country they are made in addition to a highly restrictive connected vehicle software ban. Before we dive into this massive economic wreckage, I need you to do one thing right now to prove you are committed to your own financial freedom journey. Drop a comment below with your exact age and the precise dollar amount you are realistically committing to invest every single month through your brokerage or your Roth IRA, even if it is just Wusha dollars or Woodinin dollars, because building wealth is entirely about discipline and long-term consistency. Type it in right now so we can hold each other accountable as a community, because the true secret to generational wealth is time in the market, and never trying to time the market like a gambling degenerate. If you have seen any automotive car content online over the past year, you will know that I am talking specifically about Chinese electric vehicles. Prominent tech commentators have stated that if these vehicles ever came to the United States, they would completely cook everything that we currently have here, because they are simply too good. They have too much advanced tech, and they are far too cheap to not dominate the entire industry. Reviewers were completely impressed by a $19 foreign car that feels like it would have cost $19 if it were physically manufactured in the United States. And there are other models of Chinese electric vehicles that cost even less. Famously, the BYD Seagull sells globally for about $9 to $9 and comes with incredibly high reviews across the industry. But this video is not just about electric cars. It is about a massive geopolitical decision that the United States has made to systematically wall off trade with one of its biggest global trading partners, and increasingly with the entire rest of the world as well. Over the past year, the United States has launched one of the most aggressive tariff campaigns in the past 19 years, targeting critical sectors like automobiles, consumer electronics, industrial steel, aluminum, and now vital life-saving pharmaceuticals. The last time America made a drastic protectionist decision like this was back in the year 1994, and the historical result was that global trade completely collapsed by over 90% in the years immediately following. So today we are going to walk through what is actually happening in the macroeconomy. What exactly happened the last time we tried something this radical, and exactly what it is going to cost you as a regular consumer. The trade decision we need to cover first today is the 19% wall on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Starting recently, the United States raised tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles from 25% all the way up to an absolute 19% wall. After leadership shifted in November of 2024, the administration kept those tariffs at 19%, and on top of that, a connected vehicle software ban was finalized in January of 2024. There is also the highly restrictive EV Tax Credit Act. In order to qualify for a $10 consumer electric vehicle tax credit in the United States, your car must be fully assembled in North America and use battery materials sourced directly from the United States or acceptable free trade partners. The connected software ban, on the other hand, basically states that any vehicle using Chinese or Russian linked software or hardware components will legally not be allowed to be sold anywhere in the United States. This boils down to national security at the end of the day, because the government does not want your personal data somehow ending up in the hands of foreign adversarial governments. It is the exact same underlying narrative as the TikTok story, where the platform had to be spun off to an American company in order to keep existing within America. So even if you completely remove the 19% tariff tomorrow morning, the software ban alone would still keep Chinese electric vehicles entirely out of America. And that is why it is structurally called a wall. You have a 19% tariff which heavily disincentivizes foreign companies from selling here, as well as the software ban and complete exclusion from federal tax incentives. Now, the Chinese electric vehicle wall is one thing, but it is actually just one small piece of a much bigger pie that represents a massive structural shift in United States trade policy over the last couple of years. We currently have aggressive tariff rates on almost every single global trading partner, to the point where average United States tariff rates spiked from 6% to a staggering 0% across the board. And that is the highest average tariff rate this nation has seen in Basha years. In February of 2024, the Supreme Court stepped in and ruled ilfuta oats to senfuta ots that the specific law the White House was using to enforce these sweeping tariffs was not legally valid. The Supreme Court basically said that the president did not have the explicit legal authority to impose most of these broad tariffs, so a huge chunk of them got thrown out completely. But the very next day, the administration used a completely different law to put a sheer percent flat tariff right back on everything. Then in April, new rounds of tariffs were announced on steel, aluminum, and copper, plus up to a massive 19% tariff on pharmaceutical imports. In addition to these protectionist policies, we also have artificial intelligence chip export controls, where American tech companies can export high-end AI chips like the NVIDIA HRD9 or the AMD MR2X chips, but they must physically pay the United States government 2% of their total revenues from those foreign sales. And that is completely unprecedented in modern history. Export controls are actively being used as a tool for generating government revenue and enforcing national security. What we are really left with right now is an America that looks increasingly protectionist. Protectionism is where a government uses aggressive tariffs and import quotas to shield domestic legacy industries from foreign competition. The underlying idea is that if you make foreign products artificially more expensive, regular people will buy American products instead, and therefore protect local working-class jobs. That was the entire stated premise of having the tariff in the first place, which was to liberate the local economy from trade deficits and bring manufacturing back to the United States. And that sounds somewhat reasonable on television, but does it actually work in practice? To answer that critical question, let us look at the last time we did something exactly like this in the United States, and that was back in the year 1970. Back then, President Herbert Hoover passed an act called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. It essentially raised import duties on overarching items that would come into the United States from foreign trade partners. The economic logic back then was exactly the same as it is today. Protect domestic farmers, protect domestic manufacturers, and disincentivize foreign competition. This also came at an incredibly sensitive time in American history, just a year after the Great Depression started in October of 1970. What was fascinating is that when this bill was being debated, over 10 trained economists actually signed a formal petition begging the president at the time to not sign this dangerous tariff act. And the more surprising part was that the president actually agreed with the economists, calling the bill obnoxious and opposing it internally. But here's the ultimate kicker: he still signed it anyway, because he felt massive political pressure from his own party, his cabinet, and various domestic business partners. So the bill went into place, and while it was initially celebrated as a win for local industry, in the period of WOO years after the bill was enacted, United States imports decreased 2% from $6 billion down to $1 billion. United States exports to Europe also dropped from $10 billion down to a measly $7 billion. After a period of time, by all objective measures, this bill was considered an absolute economic disaster, and the Great Depression being well underway did not help that fact either. In the early 1970s, the next president, FDR, passed the Reciprocal Trade Agreements Act of 1970, and the United States spent the next 10 years building a massive global free trade system. This included creating the World Trade Organization, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. All of these historic acts basically stemmed from the stark reality of how protectionism had failed so miserably back in the year 1970. So now that you know that vital piece of economic history, let us actually take a look into how today's trade policies are playing out in real life, and exactly what it is costing your bank account. We already talked about the wall keeping Chinese electric vehicles out in particular, but what about the entire automobile sector in general? Because no car assembled in the United States is 19% made here, given the hyper-global nature of the modern automotive industry. There are always at least some core parts of a United States assembled vehicle that originate from another country. Even Tesla, with all of their massive mega factories in the United States, will still source some of their manufacturing parts from other countries. So when you enact these heavy tariffs on imported steel, aluminum, and foreign auto parts, we are not only seeing foreign cars becoming more expensive, but domestically produced cars are spiking in price too. Institutional analysts estimate that combined tariffs on vehicles and parts will cost the industry about $6 billion in year Y, rising to $10 billion by year 7. I.e. translates to an increase in cost of about $10 per individual vehicle. Industry data shows that for vehicles priced under $19, tariffs are currently adding up to $10 more to the total sticker price, and major luxury brands like Audi have already raised prices on most of their vehicle lineup between $9 and $16 per model. Forecasts for auto sales in the United States have dropped for the remainder of this year, citing problems with not only tariffs but the ongoing conflicts and volatile oil prices. All the while, BYD has just officially passed Tesla as the world's #1 electric vehicle seller, and China is now not only the largest global auto manufacturer, but their electric vehicles account for nearly 10% of total global production. It is my take that these restrictions on trade in this sector specifically are causing us to slowly fall behind the rest of the world. If you are not the player trading resources, you are falling behind other players who are actively trading, and if foreign nations are perfectly willing to trade with countries like Canada, the United Kingdom, and Mexico, while we sit behind a protectionist wall, we drastically increase our chances of losing the global trade game permanently. So that is the automobile sector, more expensive across the board. But it does not stop there, because consumer electronics is another massive sector that is getting hit hard. Market reports expect durable goods prices of electronics, toys, tools, and small appliances to rise 30% in Arding Ardo, and we can already see some of this becoming evident in our daily lives. Last year, all Sun Am Ajor video game console makers aggressively raised their consumer prices. One tech giant raised its console prices in August of Arding Arwu, another raised its series prices in October, and the highly anticipated next generation mobile console launched at $10, which was a massive $10 jump from the original version. In addition, all WMI Ajor PC manufacturers have warned of Shiwu to Arsha% price hikes heading into the second half of Arding Ardo. Industry research firms found that a mainstream $10 laptop could see its manufacturing cost increase by nearly 6%, meaning that exact same laptop could cost you over $10 by dollars. By the end of this year, of course, tariffs are not the only reason this is going on. There is also a massive memory chip shortage going on right now because AI data centers create so much insatiable demand for high-end chips and memory. And this structural shift in demand is causing massive chip makers to shift production away from consumer chips and more towards lucrative AI chips. And if I were a chip maker, I would probably do the exact same thing. If all the AI chips are in high demand and that is what is going to give me the highest corporate profit margin, I am obviously going to shift my resources to making AI chips rather than cheap consumer chips. It is like owning a general supply store during the historical gold rush, and all of a sudden you see iron shovels selling at sheer times the profit rate compared to denim jeans. You are probably going to carry a lot more shovels at your store, because that is where the demand is. But as a result, the regular people who just want a pair of jeans are going to suffer. Look at the audited charts. Not only does memory as a percentage of manufacturing costs of a device make up typically Arshu to Sensuwu% for most consumer electronics, but the average contract prices of DRAM are up across the board. In addition, you have worldwide smartphone and PC shipments projected to be down this year. The United States also has heavy tariffs on semiconductors from foreign suppliers. So you already have all these macro forces working against creating chips for consumer devices, plus the additional tariff layer. Therefore, the entire supply chain for electronics is completely hamstrung, and prices to consumers are just going to get worse. Still, though, it probably might not be as bad as the newest sector that is becoming severely affected by trade policies, and that is the pharmaceutical sector. Recently, an executive order was signed imposing 19% tariffs on patented pharmaceutical products and their active chemical ingredients. Now, the good news is that it does not immediately affect a lot of basic generic drugs, but here is exactly how it works. If a drug company has signed a pricing deal with the administration and is actively building manufacturing plants inside the United States, they won't pay a tariff. If you are a company that is just planning to build here but you haven't finished construction yet, the tariff is Arsha% and then it legally escalates to 19% in C years. And if you have not made any single deal at all with the administration, it is just going to be a flat 19% tariff. Now, the interesting part here is that Shusi out of the Shitsemi Ajor drug companies have already signed deals with the administration, and a lot of the pricing deals actually look pretty good on paper. For example, popular weight loss medications, which used to cost patients over $10 a month, are going to be available for around $17 a month. Some drugs like life-saving insulin will be capped at $10 a month. Another major weight management drug has already dropped to $17 a month after working directly with the administration. Now, the problem and the bigger macroeconomic concern is that a lot of the United States pharmaceutical supply chain is still completely dependent on foreign production, especially from countries like China or India. According to official data, more than 80% of the manufacturing sites for active pharmaceutical ingredients are located entirely outside of the country, and China and India together supply more than 80% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients used in domestic drug manufacturing. And just like the automotive sector, if a drug has any active ingredients from another country, they will be forced to pay that country's tariff rate. But the part that is really concerning is that while generic drugs are currently exempt from tariffs for now, the White House explicitly stated that they will reassess that exemption in a year. If generic drugs end up getting hit, important everyday drugs like antibiotics, cancer treatments, blood pressure medication, and arthritis medication might skyrocket in price. We can clearly see that a trade strategy focused on protectionism ends up snowballing into tariffs across one sector and then another, and then another. Cars are already more expensive. Electronics are becoming more expensive, and your daily medication might be next. Let us talk about what all of this actually costs you as a consumer and what you can do about it right now. Reputable think tanks estimate that tariffs currently in effect amount to roughly $1,000 in additional hidden costs per American household in Ardenardo. Other university budget labs put it at between $9 and $1,000. Whichever number you choose to believe, it is blindingly clear that regular people are now paying significantly more for everyday goods. The whole argument was that these policies will bring manufacturing back home to the United States. But I would actually argue that when the United States is not engaging in free trade, like it did in the past, it actually makes us structurally weaker because other countries will just trade without us. For example, some of the biggest trade deals of the year so far have been the European Union signing a free trade agreement with India, where India will eliminate or reduce tariffs on 60% of European goods, and Europe will eliminate tariffs on 20% of Indian imports over 2 years. Another massive trade deal is that Canada struck a deal with China to cut tariffs on electric vehicles, the exact same cheap electric vehicles that we do not have access to. And in that deal, China agreed to cut tariffs on Canadian canola oil. Meanwhile, imports from China to America have declined by $1 billion over the last year relative to Ardenardo, but imports from other Asian nations increased by a cumulative $1 billion. So it seems like even if we have reduced our reliance on one specific country, we are just shifting that exact same import demand elsewhere. I do want to say it is still early. Some of these domestic factory investments could potentially pay off in years, but as of right now, you and I are paying higher retail prices. We are falling behind in key technological spaces, and the rest of the world is making massive lucrative trade deals completely without us. If history taught us anything, it is that once you start incorporating walls and protectionism, other countries are going to aggressively retaliate, and that is just the natural reaction of other nations. So what can you actually do about it as of right now? Are there any actionable steps that you can take to hedge your capital against these protectionist policies? I think there are 10 concrete moves you need to make. Number E, if you are planning a major purchase, whether that is a car, a laptop, or a new cell phone, I would say, just do it as soon as you can, because waiting will not get you a better deal. Prices are all projected to go up in the second half of Ardenardo and not down, so I would definitely look at buying things sooner rather than later. Number R, if you are on any type of branded medication, I would talk to your doctor about shifting to generic alternatives immediately. Generic drugs will hopefully stay tariff exempt for the foreseeable future. If your insurance covers your brand name drugs completely, that is great. But if you do not have the best health insurance and you are dependent on some type of branded pharmaceutical drug, I would definitely check with your hospital just to know what the implications of the costs are going to be moving forward. And number 10, you need to radically rethink your overall consumption of everything. Trade policies and tariffs are essentially just hidden consumer consumption taxes. The more you consume of imported goods, the more money you are going to pay to the state. On this channel, we preach buying fewer things but of significantly higher quality. If you can completely avoid impulse purchases in a heavy tariff environment, that is not only a disciplined financial mindset to have, it is a highly practical savings strategy. From an investing perspective, these trade policies are guaranteed to cause persistent inflation. They already have. And so that means if you are sitting on a massive pile of raw cash right now, your true purchasing power is actively decreasing as we speak. The number E way to hedge against that inflation is to stop being a retail begolder and keep aggressively investing in the markets. Cost averaging your money into low-cost index funds like VOO or high-dividend growth funds like SCHD inside a tax. Free shelter like a Roth IRA is how you protect your wealth. While we do not know what the ultimate effects of these policies are going to be in the long term, I am personally just not optimistic on keeping America gated off from the rest of the world. A lot of mainstream talking heads are going to point out that the stock market is doing great because of all the progress in the artificial intelligence space. For example, the SPY is near all-time highs as we speak. However, I am always going to remind you that the stock market is absolutely not the real economy, and many regular people are arguing that the actual economy is not doing great. We are seeing mass corporate layoffs across many different industries right now, as well as everyday items getting significantly more expensive. So I am just really not confident that everything is just going to be perfect and dandy for the next few years. As many stock market bulls like to claim, of course, I would love to hear your comments on what you think if you have a solid counterpoint, or similarly if you resonate with this macroeconomic breakdown. Let me know down below. Your savings rate and investment rate is the only thing you have direct control over. Use this market data to motivate you to keep taking the next step, to keep moving in the positive direction towards your great, big, beautiful tomorrow. Hit that subscribe button. Peace.